Dirty Birds, buckle up, because training camp isn't even a day old and the NFC South is already on fire. A two-time Pro Bowler, a Super Bowl champion, one of the most feared interior defensive linemen of his entire generation, has just told the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, "Get me out of here." And now every single team with cap space and a pulse is scrambling to figure out if they can pull off the heist of the century. So grab a seat, because this is the kind of story that could completely reshape the entire NFC South. And yes, the Atlanta Falcons might actually have a shot at doing something absolutely delicious to their own division rival. Let's set the scene. It's the summer of 2026. Veteran players across the league are reporting to training camp, ready to grind through two-a-days, ready to fight for roster spots, ready to get their bodies right before the season kicks off. And then, out of nowhere, right as the Buccaneers are opening the doors to their facility, the news breaks. Vita Vea, the massive, terrifying 6'4", 347-pound wrecking ball who has anchored Tampa Bay's defensive line for 8 straight seasons, has formally requested a trade. Not a hint, not a rumor whispered by an anonymous source, an actual, official trade request confirmed by his own agent. And the reason is about as classic as it gets in the NFL: money. Vea is entering the very last year of a 4-year, $71 million contract. He's set to make somewhere around $17 to $18 million this season, but here's the catch. None of that money is fully guaranteed at this point, and Vea wants long-term security before he strolls back out onto that practice field. He wants a new deal. He wants to be paid like the elite player he still is. And after months of conversations that reportedly never got anywhere close to a real agreement, he decided enough was enough. Now, this isn't some rookie throwing a tantrum. This is a guy who has been the backbone of that Tampa Bay defense since the moment he arrived. Selected 12th overall back in the 2018 draft out of the University of Washington, Vea has spent his entire career in one uniform. He was there for the magical Super Bowl run, the one where the Buccaneers shocked the football world and dismantled Patrick Mahomes and the high-powered Kansas City Chiefs right in their own building. Vea was a key piece of that unit, a run-stuffing, quarterback-collapsing monster who made life miserable for opposing offensive lines. Over the years, he's racked up 35 career sacks, dozens of tackles for loss, and enough quarterback pressures to make any offensive coordinator sweat just hearing his name. Last season alone, he still notched over 50. The panic inside the Buccaneers front office. This wasn't some throwaway contributor requesting his release. This was arguably their best defensive player, the guy who makes their whole run defense function, standing up and saying, "Pay me or trade me." And the timing could not be worse for Tampa Bay. Their head coach is already sitting on a very warm seat heading into this season. Their franchise quarterback is also in the final year of his own contract, and reportedly, here's where it gets juicy though. Because once word got out that Vea wanted a new home, the rumor mill absolutely exploded with speculation about where he could land. And according to multiple league sources, Vea has his sights set on very specific destinations. He reportedly wants to head out to California or possibly to the Las Vegas Raiders. Why? Because Vea grew up in the Bay Area as a die-hard Raiders fan. This is a guy who was rooting for Silver and Black long before floated as potential trade suitors. Teams that reportedly have both the cap room and the roster need to make a serious run at acquiring him. The Chargers in particular have been mentioned as an ideal fit, a team that already has a nasty pass rush trio and could use exactly the kind of immovable object in the middle that Vea provides against the run. But then there's one team that keeps getting whispered about that would send an absolute shockwave through the entire NFC South: the Atlanta Falcons. Now stay with me here, Dirty Birds, because on the surface this sounds like an absolute fantasy. Why in the world would the Tampa Bay Buccaneers trade one of their franchise cornerstones to a division rival, a team they play twice a year every single year forever? It almost never happens. Division trades involving star-caliber players are about as rare as a unicorn sighting in this league. And there is a very real chance the Buccaneers would simply refuse to even entertain the conversation. But here's the thing. Sometimes the value of making a team say absolutely not is worth more than people realize, and sometimes the numbers actually make a lot of sense even if the emotional optics feel insane. Let's talk about why Atlanta could actually be a real player here, at least in theory. The Falcons are currently sitting on somewhere around $38 to $39 million in salary cap space, which puts them among the top 5 teams in the entire league in available cap room. That is a significant war chest. They also have draft capital they could dangle in a trade package, and most importantly, they have a very real, very obvious need on the defensive line, specifically against the run. Let's be honest about how last season actually went for the Falcons' defense. Under new defensive-minded leadership, this defense took a legitimate leap forward as a pass-rushing unit, setting a franchise record with 57 total sacks. That is not a typo. 57 sacks. That's the kind of number that gets a defensive coordinator a long-term extension and a bunch of national praise. But here's the part nobody wants to talk about at the tailgate. While the Falcons were teeing off on opposing quarterbacks, they were getting absolutely gashed on the ground. Atlanta finished near the bottom of the league in total rushing yards allowed, surrendering somewhere around 4.5 yards every single time an opposing running back touched the football. Do the math on that. That means on basically every 2 carries, the opposing offense was picking up a fresh set of downs almost by default. And it wasn't just a bad number on a spreadsheet either. There were actual embarrassing moments. The Indianapolis Colts, for example, absolutely torched Atlanta's run defense for 300 yards on the ground in a single game last season. 300 yards. That's the kind of stat line that makes a defensive coordinator lose sleep and makes fans start typing angry things into the comment section. So here's where Vita Vea suddenly makes a lot of football sense for this Falcons roster. This is a man who at 347 pounds is built like a small mountain and yet moves with the kind of quickness and technique that most players his size simply do not have. He doesn't just occupy blockers, he collapses the pocket, he shoves centers backward into the quarterback's lap, and he plugs run lanes like he's a human roadblock. Dropping a player like that into the middle of an already ferocious Atlanta pass rush would be, and I don't think this is an exaggeration, absolutely terrifying for opposing offenses. Imagine that defensive front. You've already got talented edge rushers who helped generate that franchise record sack total, and now you're adding one of the most disruptive interior defensive tackles this league has seen in the last decade. That's not just an upgrade. That's a total identity shift for this defense. From pretty good but leaky against the run to we simply do not have an answer for you up front. The Falcons do currently have some depth pieces on that interior line. They made a trade earlier in the year to bring in another young defensive tackle, and there's another developing player also fighting for reps in that room. Neither of them, with all due respect, is Vita Vea. Neither of them has a Super Bowl ring. Be smart about it. Vea requested this trade, which is a critical detail. That means Tampa Bay does not exactly have a ton of leverage here. This isn't a situation where the Buccaneers are shopping their guy around trying to extract maximum value from desperate suitors. This is a situation where their own star player publicly said he wants out, and once a player says that out loud, his value on the trade market almost always takes a hit. Because everyone in the league knows the team is now somewhat motivated to move a more realistic price point if Atlanta really wanted to make a run at this. Would probably land somewhere in the range of a third-round selection, maybe with some late-round compensation attached depending on how negotiations played out. But here is the massive, glaring elephant in the room that Falcons fans absolutely have to reckon with. Even if Atlanta made the call, Even if they offered a competitive package, the Buccaneers might simply say no on principle alone. Emotion into decisions like this, whether they admit it publicly or not. Tampa Bay's smarter play here might genuinely be shipping Vea out to the NFC entirely, somewhere he can never haunt them again, rather than risking him becoming a walking reminder of what they let slip away twice a season for years to come. And that is exactly why some analysts believe the real value in Atlanta even making this call isn't necessarily about the outcome. It's about making the Buccaneers say no. Think about it this way. If the Falcons reach out and Tampa Bay declines, Atlanta loses absolutely nothing. They tried. They showed aggression. And more importantly, there's a very real chance Vea ends up leaving the NFC South completely anyway, which means the Falcons might not have to face him at all going forward regardless of what happens. That's a win in itself for a Falcons team looking to finally take control of run defense in a brutal, physical division. Of course, there's a very real counter-argument here too, and Dirty Birds, we have to be honest about it. Even if by some miracle the Buccaneers agreed to a trade, Vea is 31 years old and on an expiring contract. Whoever acquires him almost certainly has to be prepared to open up the checkbook again and sign him to a brand new long-term extension almost immediately. Otherwise, you're renting a rental for one single season and giving up real draft capital to do it. That's a gamble. Atlanta would essentially be committing significant future cap resources to a player already in his 30s. In a league where defensive tackles can decline quickly once the wear and tear of playing that position for nearly a decade starts to catch up with them. Still, when you weigh it all out, the pure football fit here is almost too perfect to ignore. A dominant run stopper walking straight into a defense that desperately needs exactly that skill set. Joining a pass rush that already broke franchise records, all while a team sits on a mountain of cap space and actual draft ammunition to make an offer. It's a long shot. Nobody is pretending otherwise. Division trades for star-caliber players almost never happen in this league, and the smart money says Vea ultimately ends up somewhere out west, likely with the Raiders given his childhood fandom, or possibly with the Chargers given their cap flexibility and need. But stranger things have absolutely happened in the NFL, and the fact that this conversation is even happening right now, on day one of training camp, tells you just how unstable this Buccaneers situation has suddenly become. So here's the real question, Dirty Birds. Do you actually want the Atlanta Falcons to make this call? Is it worth the draft capital? Worth the future contract commitment? Worth potentially strengthening a division rival's leverage in negotiations, all for the chance to plug one of the most dominant interior defensive linemen in football into the middle of your defense? Or is this simply a fun off-season fantasy that has absolutely zero chance of becoming reality? Either way, one thing is for certain. The NFC South just got a whole lot spicier before a single preseason snap has even been played. Tampa Bay now has to figure out how to navigate two enormous contract situations at once, all while trying to keep their season from spiraling before it even begins. And Atlanta, sitting there with cap space, with draft picks, and with a glaring hole against the run, gets to sit back and watch the chaos unfold, ready to pounce if the opportunity ever actually presents itself. This is exactly the kind of storyline that makes the NFL offseason so addicting. One trade request, one contract dispute, and suddenly the entire landscape of a division is thrown into question. So keep your eyes locked on this one, because trade rumors like this have a way of evolving fast, sometimes within hours, and you do not want to be the last one to know if this thing actually starts moving. All right, Dirty Birds, that is going to do it for this breakdown. But before you go, I need you to do a few things for me. First, if you enjoyed this video, smash that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow and helps more Falcons fans find this content. Second, drop a comment down below and give me a percentage, 1 to 100, on how likely you think it is that the Atlanta Falcons actually land Vita Vea this offseason. I want to see some bold predictions in that comment section. And finally, if you are not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you never miss a single update as this story and every other piece of Falcons news continues to develop throughout training camp. There is a lot more coming, so stick around, stay locked in, and as always, rise up.